Greenwich Bay is an estuary, a semi-enclosed inlet of the sea that is diluted by incoming fresh water. It is a 5 square mile body of water located on the western side of Narragansett Bay, containing 5 protected coves and surrounded by a 26-mile watershed. Greenwich Bay has provided people with food, transportation, trade, and recreational opportunities for centuries. However, the impacts of land use in the towns bordering the bay have led to a serious decline in water quality. All life in Greenwich Bay is affected by the non-living parts of the ecosystem, such as oxygen, nutrients, chemicals, and salt. All of these factors affect the health of the bay as a whole. To understand the problem of pollution in Greenwich Bay, it is necessary to look into its history.
In the 1700s, Apponaug and Greenwich Cove witnessed the creation of seaports and shipbuilding centers that gave rise to the towns we see today. Greenwich Cove came to be known as the best fishing ground for scallops of all Narragansett Bay, and quahogs and clams were numerous in the local waters.
The 1800s saw the rise of the manufacturing mills. For many years, these mills dumped untreated textile and metal waste, along with sewage, directly into the bay. Apponaug Cove is said to have bubbled with red and yellow suds from the mill chemicals. Ann Holst, a former Department of Environmental Management officer, noted that kids in the 1930s and 1940s used to work Greenwich Cove for extra money, but they never knew what color the shellfish were going to be. It all depended on what color the bleachery was using that day. They'd have to hose it all off.
The impacts of early industry on the bay were compounded by the effects of suburban development. After World War II, many returning soldiers purchased new homes in suburban areas with the help of a special federal bill. The homes were frequently built on half-acre lots and had poor quality septic systems, so sewage was constantly flowing into the water table and the bay. The problem became worse as summer cottages in Oakland Beach, Buttonwoods, Nossauket, Potawatomi, and surrounding areas became permanent homes, as they were only prepared for seasonal septic needs.
The federal government and the Rhode Island Department of Environmental Management have addressed many of the problems associated with industrial pollution, and clams no longer come in colors, but there still are many sources of pollution that threaten the bay today.
Humans alter the landscape in many ways. Buildings and pavement prevent normal drainage, and rain washes increasing amounts of oil, metal, and chemical deposits off highways and parking lots into the bay. You can see the oil stains scattered all over this parking lot. Whenever a car is leaking harmful fluids, they fall to the pavement to sit until the rain comes. Then they get washed away with the water into storm drains like this one. This storm drain empties directly into Hardingsboro.
Green grassy lawns create more runoff than denser natural vegetation, but the bigger problem are the amounts of pesticides and fertilizers used. Rain carries nitrogen from the fertilizer into the bay, where it feeds algae and causes uncontrolled growth.
Failed septic systems leach untreated waste and bacteria directly into the bay. In a normal working system, waste enters from household pipes. Solids settle in the tank, which is supposed to be pumped out every few years, while the water drains into a leaching field. This field will hold the water until the bacteria is filtered out. However, when septic systems fail, water full of bacteria overflows or is pushed outward, eventually being washed into Greenwich Bay.
Another factor in the pollution of Greenwich Bay is the destruction of natural filters, such as eelgrass beds and salt marshes. Eelgrass is a natural filter that has almost completely disappeared in the bay. Salt marshes protect the coastline from erosion and provide safety for small fish and other types of wildlife. These filters have been destroyed by runoff pollution, construction, and sometimes even by intentional filling.
Salt marshes are an incredibly important habitat because they are the buffer between the groundwater discharge and the open ocean area. The buffer comes in a variety of shapes and sizes. One is, of course, the plant material, which is the most obvious characteristic of a salt marsh when you visit the Spartina marsh grasses. But the root system of these plants is very critical to the uptake and utilization of many of these chemicals that are in groundwater as it bubbles up through the edge of the shoreline.
Everyone wants to keep their car clean, and a lot of people would rather do it themselves than pay in an automated car wash. Once you apply the chemicals and hose down the car, you're basically creating pollutants and rain. It all washes down the street and into the nearest storm drain.
Nearly every waste product that doesn't go in a garbage can winds up washing down storm drains which go directly into the bay. Sometimes pollutants aren't carried just by rainwater into the drains. People themselves deliberately dump things in. One of the worst forms of pollution is when people pour their dirty automobile oil, leftover paint, and chemicals down storm drains to get rid of them.
Another source of pollution is the many solvents, cleaning products, and other chemicals that Rhode Islanders dump down their drains. It might surprise people to learn that although wastewater treatment plants filter the water for bacteria and phosphorus, many chemical contaminants from household products find their way into the bay.
Bacteria in the bay comes mainly from human and animal waste. When bacteria levels are high, humans become sick and shellfish become contaminated. A recent study shows that of all the different types of animal waste, waterfowl have the most harmfully concentrated doses of bacteria in their feces, nearly 3 times that of humans. It turns out it is actually harmful to the environment to feed the geese that gather near the bay.
In 1992, a severe storm washed large numbers of bacteria from contaminated farmland, groundwater, and storm drains into the bay, resulting in a complete closure of the bay to shellfishing for 1.5 years. This event led to the creation of the Greenwich Bay Initiative, a collaboration of government, business, academic, and local organizations, whose goal was to bring back the bay's water quality for its ecological, recreational, and economical benefits. Their strategy was to address the bay's problems on a watershed basis, looking at the land that contributes to runoff and stream flow to the bay, as well as the bay habitat and ecosystem. While the bay opens to shellfishing now in dry weather, any more than half an inch of rain will trigger a closure. Parts of Greenwich Bay are permanently closed to shellfishing due to high bacteria counts.
Over 3,000 boats are docked or moored on Greenwich Bay, and all are a potential source of pollution. Sewage from boats, treated and untreated, is being dumped directly into the bay. Heavy metals from boats being painted, sandblasted, or washed can wind up in the bay, as well as chemical compounds such as solvents, antifreeze, bilge water, and barnacle repellent. Hydrocarbons from engines and fueling ducts can also pose dangers.
Polluted streams that feed into the bay become a major source of pollution. This kind of pollution can come from industrial sources or from surprisingly natural ones. The Department of Environmental Management once discovered that a major source of bacterial pollution in the bay came from rainwater runoff of a manure pile at a dairy farm. The rain washed through the pile to a small brook that eventually emptied into the bay.
Sediment disposition has created many concerns, especially among boaters and the marine industry. In the 1770s, Warwick and the East Greenwich coves were deep enough to host large cargo and passenger ships, which is no longer possible today. While shoaling is largely a natural phenomenon, it is hastened by the destruction of salt marshes and the influx of sand and sediments from roadways. At Greenwich Bay and Norton's Marina, you can see examples of the problem created by years of municipal sand flowing through the storm drains and into the bay.
As you can see, this storm drain here empties directly into the Massachusetts River, and it carries all of the sediment and chemicals from the road directly into the bay. You can even see here the sediment just flowing away into the stream. And all this will go directly into Greenwich Bay.
There are 2 wastewater treatment plants on Greenwich Bay, one in East Greenwich and one in Warwick. Treated wastewater does not contain bacteria, but it is very high in nitrogen. Of all pollutants right now, nitrogen and phosphorus are the most dangerous to East Greenwich Bay. They lead to eutrophication, the rapid blooms of algae and phytoplankton. Algae blooms typically happen in warm weather after a rainstorm, when large amounts of lawn fertilizer and human waste are washed into the bay to add on to the wastewater already being released by the treatment plants. Algae thrives on this nitrogen until it is all consumed. These plants die and are broken down by bacteria in the water. This causes the bacteria to multiply rapidly and use up the dissolved oxygen in the water, creating a condition of hypoxia, or low oxygen, in the water. This threatens the fish and other wildlife that need the oxygen to survive.
In August of 2003, over 1 million Manhattan fish and a large number of juvenile soft-shelled clams and horseshoe crabs perished in a massive fish kill in Greenwich Bay. Hypoxic conditions have existed in parts of the bay every summer since then.
What can you do to help? Use the bare minimum of lawn fertilizer and pesticides, or none at all. Be aware that everything you put down the drain eventually ends up in the bay. Use environmentally friendly chemicals whenever possible. Never dump anything into a storm drain. Contact Save the Bay to learn how you can put warning markers on storm drains in your area.
Dispose of oil and hazardous waste at designated collection sites. If you're unsure, call the Department of Public Works to find out where. 1 quart of oil can create an oil slick the size of 2 football fields. Join the Watershed Watch and help monitor streams or bodies of water near you to help catch problems early. Participate in Save the Bay's eelgrass restoration program. See their website for dates and times and for other volunteer opportunities.
Participate in beach cleanups promoted by local agencies or organize one of your own. Report all instances of illegal activity to the Department of Environmental Management. Use marine pump-out stations instead of direct dumping of waste. Maintain septic systems in good order and connect to municipal sewer systems wherever possible. And support all efforts to improve wastewater treatment plants and denitrification facilities.
Today, communities have taken steps to be more selective in assigning land uses and choosing development projects along the bay. They have also invested in open space purchases of several hundred acres since 1987 and have created regulations to protect the environment and prevent development. Organizations such as Save the Bay and the University of Rhode Island's Watershed Watch actively monitor and help protect bay waters. We talked to Linda Green, director of the Watershed Watch program. Here's what she had to say about Greenwich Bay.
The current state of Greenwich Bay is troubled. There are lots of nutrients in the bay, and it's leading to sizable algae blooms. And when those algae blooms die off and decay, it uses up oxygen. And when the oxygen drops below 3 parts per million, then the fish and the clams and the other life in the bay can't survive. The fish might be able to swim away, but the clams and some of the other critters can't, and so it's a very difficult situation for them. There is a lot that people can do to safeguard or improve the health of the bay. One of the most important things is to be very careful about applying fertilizer to your yard, because just like fertilizer makes plants grow in your yard, it'll make the algae and plants grow in the bay. You want to make sure that if you have the ability to be on a sewer, that you're hooked into that sewer, that you're not wasting water so you don't have excess water running off, and that in your home and in your garden you have a place for water to go during rainstorms so it doesn't go into the street and down into Greenwich Bay. Well, the one thing I would like to add is that I think the volunteers who do the monitoring in Greenwich Bay and the other sites are of great importance. And not only do you learn about water and water quality, you learn what you can do to protect it, and you are really enhancing the ability of the scientists and the policymakers to make decisions, because you're providing them with the data that they need to make their decisions with.
Greenwich Bay shellfishing contributes roughly $4 million a year to Rhode Island's economy. Also of economic importance are the marine-based industries such as recreational boating, waterfront tourism, shipbuilding and outfitting, fishing, aquaculture, and marine transportation. By promoting the long-term, responsible use of the Greenwich Bay resources, the benefits to the economy and to the individual who simply wants to enjoy the beauty of the bay can be preserved.